I'll never forget the sad expression that kid had on his face. I passed along to my son what I've considered something my parents taught me that was very important in bringing up children. And Chris stuck with it without any variation. You don't talk about someone who's deceased unless you can say something nice, because they cannot defend themselves, and the story may be totally different. As we say today there are two sides to everything. Chris would hardly say anything bad about anyone. I remember him admonishing me one day when I said something about one of his friends, and I'll never forget that conversation. He was putting Armor All on his truck tires, and he must have used gallons of that stuff down through the years, because those tires were shiny and black. And I said something about one of his friends while he was putting Armor All on his tires, and he looked up at me and he said, "Dad, you don't have to say things like that about him, because my friends had a rough time." I'll never forget that conversation. Chris's friends did honor his memory during their weddings, and he was honored at his brother's wedding with a large portrait that sat at the altar. And as the sun shone through that window, it blanked out all of the photographic equipment's ability to compensate for sunlight. We looked over there, and the beams of that sun were shining on his portrait. One of his co-workers with Bailey and Fry Construction Company told us he never wanted to forget Chris. He named his son Ryland Christopher, born after Chris's death. Let me make sure that you understand Chris was not a saint, and I don't believe we've ever tried to leave that impression. However, he's never been charged with any major offenses. And I know Chris was scared to death knowing what was happening to him. However, I know beyond any doubt that he drew his last few breaths, that cold mud caked on his bottoms of his feet from having to walk through that field to his execution spot, that his concern was for Channon with a C. I know that hurt him far more than any of those 3 bullets that tore into his body. In the outline I've tried to follow in writing this impact statement, it mentions allowance for stating monetary losses I've suffered. Since January the 7th of 2007, I've turned down job offers as a consultant, subcontractor, whichever one you prefer to refer to it as, to remain close to my family and attend every court hearing, which numbers right now well over 100. This has resulted in hundreds of thousands of dollars in lost income. But you know, this really doesn't bother me anymore. If I could have my son back for just a short period of time and tell him how much I loved him, I'd give all the money, all the property I have, and would ever earn in the future, and go live in the street. That's how much I miss him. The hurt, the heartbreak, the extreme loss of a wonderful child, like my family and I have had to do, and endure, and then realize also the pain and suffering that he had to go through during his last few seconds on earth. I'd like to close, and I borrowed this quote from Jake Mabey, who writes for the Hall Shopper. He coined this phrase while doing an article honoring Chris, which included some of his baseball achievements, and he used a lot of baseball lingo in the process, and statements from friends as how much they thought of Chris. I'd like to close with that. No one can hurt Chris Newsom anymore, and he doesn't even have to run real fast around third base to beat the throw to home plate, because Chris Newsom is safe at home. Thank you.